Hello, welcome back to the ministry. This is Taj McCameron, and the Lord gave me another word, which is kind of a continuation of one of the words that I already spoke about. And it's called, it's only a test. You know when they do those things on TV where they're saying that the international broadcasting system is doing a test on your television, and it stops everything that's going on the television to run the message across the top, and then it's got that testing sound. You may even see that in certain states where they'll do periodic testing of alarm systems in the case of an emergency. They used to do it all the time around here. I haven't heard it in a long time. And the only thing that I really see lately, and this is something that the Lord's been kind of continually been showing me for about 3-4 years now, no matter where I was. When I was in New York, I saw it, and even now. And you'll hear the frequency for the 911 ambulance going through your state, town, on your block, what have you, when you hear the sirens. And God kind of gave me a revelation. Now, previously, I talked about this when I was talking about, I think in part 2, where I was talking about mindset. And I mentioned the oppressive spirit in David. Well, God brought me back to the episode that I was talking about of my show, because it came on last night. I thought it was going to come on as the second episode on Monday night, but it actually came on as the first episode on Tuesday. So I was like, oh, okay. So I initially wasn't going to watch it, but God's been doing this new thing with me. God's speaking to me in a different way, which, Lord, I get it. Is making sense. Because I told God, if he was putting me through a season of testing, he's got to show me something in a different way, because I no longer have access to what I had originally been getting the messages from. So, I was watching that episode last night, but God's been doing this thing where he's showing me two different things, because I ended up watching the New Orleans NCIS yesterday. It was a 3-part episode, but I actually had seen that 3-part episode before. I think I'd only seen the last 2 parts to that episode, and it was interesting because of the way that when I watched it, it was 2 different sets of people, and it was a similar scenario. You had a leader who was a man in one scenario who knew that he had an enemy. Okay, follow me. And in it, this enemy to him was his Goliath, because what the guy was doing was he was systematically separating him from his team. You ever heard the saying that a house divided cannot stand? So this man and his team were very close. And because of that, what was happening is the closer that he got to his enemy, and the closer he got to the trail of his enemy was literally systematically taking out his ability to run his team. So he would take one member out, one ended up in jail for something. And then the one that was in jail ended up, because they cops for the specific type of ward, meaning they put a lot of people in jail in a specific ward, that particular person ended up in a ward of the prison they should have never ended up being in, which was with the people that they had arrested. So he knew as soon as that person got transferred, knowing full well that that person being in that place was not good for them. So it initially was beginning the process of him starting to decline. He would make chess moves. He would make one move forward, and his enemy would make another move to take out his team. Remember when I was talking about his chess moves? Now that I sit here and I think about this, all of these videos that I'm doing for the past few days link up to one another. Go ahead, God. He would make a move. He'd find out a piece of information. He's trying to figure out his case, but every step he gets closer, he loses a piece. He loses a member of his team because first the woman got taken out and she's been put in jail. Then the next case, his computer analyst, which is a very powerful piece for him because this guy has the ability to access everything he needs accessed on a computer so that he can find out what his enemy's doing. Then, who else got taken out? It was another person that arms got tied. Oh, a guy who was a high-ranking military office. He had high ranking in the office part of not really the governmental offices, but they are over in New Orleans, so it wasn't Washington D.C. type, but he was that kind of a person, meaning he had that kind of pull. So he initially came in to break their team up anyway by the guy that was trying to what's his name? That was this guy's enemy. Remember chess moves. You're on the board. You're moving forward to come against your enemy, but they're making moves to take your pieces off the board, okay? So every move that he made, somebody was being removed from his team. So the enemy strategically was taking people out on, what do you call it? That's the word I was looking for. It was on the tip of my tongue. They were kind of becoming like casualties to the mission. And the main target, his team knew that he was the main target. He was the most powerful piece on the board. He was the king of the board. So to come against him, they'd have to come against his next strongest pieces. So, and as they were going through, they ended up finding out information about, okay, what is he doing? What's the guy trying to take out? What is his real cause? And it comes to find out that they were trying to have a secret meeting. Your enemies always try to do things in secret, but remember how David when David was, I think was it David or Elijah? I think it was Elisha, that when Elisha knew the king's moves before he made them, and the king was like, how do they always know the moves ahead of time? God always gives his people the moves ahead of time. So what was happening is they found out, they put a tracker on his enemy. He made a direct meeting with his enemy. So that's like the king on the board meeting the king on the board. And he made a direct move to meet his enemy, but put a bug in his pocket to find out what he was trying to do. They knew it was a secret meeting coming. The whole thing was about the fact that this guy got killed in the first of the 3-part episodes, and he knew something about a potential meetup. They did not know where the meetup was, and they knew it was something that was about a hit to take out a certain set of people. By the second episode, they figured out that it was a certain set of people. It turned out that it was a board of people, another set, and the most powerful piece out of that set was the one woman that refused to move in the direction that the enemy was trying to go in. So she was already a queen piece, so she had the ability to make ruling decisions to say, I'm not going to help you because I already know the way you move, and you move slickly. And the guy was like, oh, you do. And she's like, no, I'm not going to help you. And they knew, his team knew that they were going to take her out because she was the only piece that was not cooperating with what the enemy wanted. So this is almost like a tri-play, meaning if you had a chessboard with 3 sets of people, okay? Which I think they actually are chessboards that go up to 6 players, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've seen it. But, meaning you're moving sets of courts of people with a board that actually is set up for 6 people. But, she was the queen. They needed to take her out. And because she was cocky, remember what I said the other day about the, sometimes you be moving ahead thinking that you are in control of the situation, that you literally are not allowing the people that are supposed to be protecting you to protect you, and you're leaving the rest of the pieces in the wind trying to get to your goal. She was trying to get to her goal, having the understanding, oh, this is not going to work for me, so I'm just going to go back. And because she was in a power position, she was ignoring the fact that she was crossing into enemy territory, which means she was being surrounded by the enemy's people. So she ended up getting taken off the board. How? The guy ended up, he offered her a drink. And they had already told her 2 times they were trying to take her out. The guy came to her directly and told her, they're trying to kill you. And she didn't want to believe it. So he ended up meeting them at the dinner, and they literally were giving her the food that was going to kill her. But they managed to stop it because the king piece from their team had sacrificed himself, putting himself in danger and literally messing up the situation to save her life. But it positioned him backwards because all of the people above him, because what did I say in the previous video? When you are in a position that there is a level of authority above you, the enemy uses that authority to your advantage to try to oppress you. Because what the enemy will always try to do is he will use legal authority. He will try to make you look like you're crazy, put you in an insane asylum, do whatever it is, or make you homeless. Thanks to Stephanie P. I didn't know none of that. She explained it in one of her videos. I can't think of the name of it. If I remember it and find it, I'll link it underneath this video. But the enemy will position you to look like the enemy, while the enemy secretly is taking out pieces behind everybody else's purview, meaning they can't see, but you see it because you're literally in the midst of the play of the game. But the people that are observing makes you look crazy. So everybody else, you look crazy while you're the one trying to move the pieces so that it's a positive outcome. So she ended up getting killed because she drank a drink that was already laced with some type of poison. It was probably the same poison that had no trace that they found in sea urchin or something like that, because that was the original plan, to give her some fish that was laced with a natural chemical that came in fish that would have instantly killed her. Well, they may have put it in her drink, and she drank it like an idiot and died. I hate it when they do that with black people, because it's like, it had to be the one black person. But so he was now in a position where he was off the board because they had removed his credential to be able to not only lead his team, but his team was thereby cut off of having access to the case at all because their badges got taken, meaning the entire team was removed. So they got one of the people back, meaning they went in and got a judge to sign off on clearance because they needed the woman that was in jail, because she was only being held on a petty charge of contempt of court. So it wasn't like she committed a major crime that they had to hold her for. They said, we need her for a case. So when they said they needed her for a case, the judge wrote it off and let her out. So, but now it came down to it. They figured out that it was literally the main guy that was coming after their boss, Lackey, who was his partner, and he wanted to take him out. So they ended up finding out that the place that, because the initial scenario was messed up, they ended up moving it to his bar, meaning he ended up being the one that they wanted to take out. So he set it up so that he had figured out what his what the plan was. So he let his team, he went to his queen piece, which was his girlfriend, and when she came to him, he left his phone with her, and that way she knew where he was going. So when the location blew up, which was the original location that was going to end up getting blown up, and I think it was the original location, but they may have shifted it. When that place ended up blowing up, they thought he was dead. But when they checked the body, found out he wasn't dead, even though his stuff was left on the body. So he now was acting as a silent player because he was assumed dead. So he was able to move and maneuver around without his enemy seeing him. So he now had the ability to maneuver and find his enemy. The first thing he did was, there was the guy that tried to blow up the place in the first place. He went after him, took him, put him in the trunk, and then took him up to the roof, and they ended up in a fight. But I think what ended up happening, I don't think that he killed that guy. I think the guy ran at him, he grabbed him, but before he could, he put his hand on him. But I think the guy ran off and he was running at him to try to throw him off the roof, and he moved. So when he moved, the guy ended up falling over the roof by himself. But we never really got to see how he fell. So it looked like he threw him off. Then the next guy, he went to get him. So he's trying to figure out what was the major point, because remember, there was the 7 people that were brought in town. There needed to be a clearance. There was a move that this guy was trying to make, and this is the best point for me to bring this point in. This guy was trying to make a move in order to have something built in the town to be a self-sustaining water plant or something like that. But he needed that one congresswoman to sign off on it, and she didn't trust. She's like, how are you going to build this when the people are still living there? And you're telling me that this needs to be built in 1 month. I don't trust on how you going to get rid of these people, seeing as I know how you move. And he's like, oh, we don't worry about it. That was one of the reasons why she wasn't going to sign off on it. So he ended up finding out when he got a hold of this guy, because he tricked the guy by using his lackey's phone, the one that had just died. He used his phone. When he used his phone, he set him up for a meeting. When he set him up for the meeting, he kidnapped him and held him hostage and was trying to figure out what exactly it was that he was going to do in order for his plan to be complete. Come to find out that it was a water treatment plant. He was going to have the water flood New Orleans and take out that part of the city. So what it was that he had to strategically get to the location to prevent this from happening. So his team was tracking him and his moves through cameras, through satellites, so on and so forth, trying to figure out what he was doing so that they could help him. They were supposed to be off the grid too, but they got their badges back because one of the women that worked on the team, who had been transferred there, had used to work for the upper bureau, and she used her connection to the guy that tried to break them up in the first place to get all of their badges back so they could get back to work. Sometimes the Lord will strategically reposition you so that you can get into position. Sometimes he'll wait to the very, very last minute to do that because they can't see you coming. So they were working on one side while he was working the other side of the case. So they eventually ended up figuring out that it was a water treatment plant. And they tracked his moves. And when they tracked his moves, they got to the plant, he disarmed all of the bombs, and they were able to take out the lackeys that were doing it. Then he got back to where he was holding the mayor, which was the guy that was his nemesis, which was his enemy from the jump, his Goliath, what have you. And 9 times out of 10, it is, he managed to figure out that the guy, that's how he ended up figuring out that the guy was the bad guy. Because, not the bad guy, but what the plan was. Because when the alarms went off, he freaked out. And he's like, why are you freaking out? Those alarms go off once or twice a week. That's how he figured out that it was the gate. So he positioned his people, and thankfully when he was driving through town, they spotted his car and they want to pull him in. And because the woman knew the guy that had pull in the government, she called him and told him, look, I need you to make a move here, because if he gets stopped, we don't know exactly what he's trying to stop from happening. And if he gets pulled in, it's going to mess everybody up. So what ends up happening is he turns around and makes a call and calls the cop that is the lead that's trying to pull him in and says, stand down. He's on a government operation. And if you pull him in, you're going to stop him from doing what it is we need him to do. So they had to let him pass. God will position the people that even in the most crazy of circumstances. So they end up getting the guy. The mayor gets arrested, and he said up there, I was kidnapped and this, that, and the other. And this is what your enemy will always do you. I've been stuck in 3 different scenarios where my enemy turned on me and when I tell you each of these 3 people acted like you would have thought that I'd have beat them down. I never put my hands on them. They were trying to take stuff from me and then screaming at the top of their lungs that I did something to them. It was the most hilarious thing in the world. I was like, really? They were trying to frame me to say that I did something to them. It was absolutely hilarious until I started praying. One woman, I remember, she literally went off on me in the church. Child went off on me in the church while I'm standing next to the pulpit. In front of the pulpit, in front of the, what do you call it? The altar. She went off on me. Made an entire scene in the church about me. And I'm like, and it was funny because, another point on a test. The woman that worked at the church, she said, you know what to do. Pray. When she said pray, it finally dawned on me. Oh, I'm supposed to go into warfare prayer. When I tell you, I stood at that altar and I started warfare praying. The woman that had been just accusing me to the hilt of accusation, when I started to pray, and I mean warfare prayer, intense, start breaking chain type prayers loudly, when I tell you, this woman looked around the corner because she had stepped into the hallway. She looked around the corner, saw me praying intensely, looked at me, and ran out the door. I cannot lie. This woman ran out the door so fast because she was like, oh, she praying. Oh, snap. Somebody came in the door about 5 minutes later and gave me $60. So sometimes it's knowing your season and knowing which way you should be doing, which way you should be warring, whether you should be warring through worship or whether you should be warring through prayer. Because sometimes the enemy come try you, just be like, I'm gonna try you. Now, where we at? I still got a few more minutes. And getting back to the test, to wrap this up, sometimes the enemy is going to work strategically around the board like that, like what I just explained. But sometimes the enemy is going to come at you in such a way that when you determine the test, because this is what I recognized when I was watching that episode last night, that there was a point in time when the test went awry, okay? And they were testing the character's agility, they were testing their mindset, and they were testing how they could react under pressure. So when they went ahead and did what they did, their test subject broke out. Not only did it break out, but it made another duplicate of himself because they were both vampires. So the king vampire made a minion and thereby killed the third person. And when the father figure, think about the father figure as God, the father figure finds out that the test went awry. So he goes and he tells the test subject, which was the daughter figure, which was the person that was being tested. Some of us have been in tests where we figured out we were being tested, but that didn't mean that the test stopped. Okay? So, because of the fact that the test continued, the test was altered because new parts ended up in play. Now, there was a moment there I didn't quite understand, but I believe the only reason that it happened the way it happened is if this particular person, which was the God ordained spouse figure, if he had come to help her during the point in time in which she had no strength, he would have rendered the test null and void because of the fact that he'd have probably killed the vampire that was supposed to test her and would have rendered the episode long. But because he never was involved in that moment, it ended up playing out the way it was supposed to. So she ends up finding out when she goes home that her mother's been taken, which makes her go on to the playing field. Some of us have been in tests where we thought that by maybe reaching for a lifeline or doing something that was going to stop the test from continuing. But it's like, no, the test is going to continue. It's just that you got to be smart enough to figure out what your next move is in the midst of the test. How, remember, the David and Goliath thing. It's a mental thing. She ended up taking out this guy by using his own Achilles heel against him. He showed his hand. Your enemy will show his hand. If you go back to the episode I was just talking about of NCIS or New Orleans, the guy showed his hand because he started to freak out when the alarm sirens went off. The test for the alarm sirens in the city. And he's like, why are you freaking out because of the alarm sirens? That was the tell to let the guy know he's freaking out about something. That's the thing you need to pay attention to. In this case, the enemy had a bottle of pills that he always had to take because it gave him migraines if he didn't take those pills. As soon as she found out about the pills, she snatched the bottle and jumped through the laundry chute. When he got downstairs, he was chasing her. He was like, okay, I'm going to come down and I'm going to chase her. There was already a glass of water downstairs. But what it was because she was intelligent enough, she poured holy water in the water. He drank it. She outsmarted him, killed him immediately. This is a test of wits. God showed me last night when I was listening to music that stand still, relax. I've been waiting on my phone to return to me